Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is the 100th episode of Let's Be Well Together podcast.
Welcome, everyone. Today is our 100th episode. Can you believe it? Yeah. We are going to hijack our regular program to bring you a light, fun look back on the 100 episodes that we have done so far. And what better time to do it than Boxing Day right after Christmas? It's a good reminiscing time. So we are going to look at our favorite segments that inspired, made us laugh, made us think and learn. And of course, remembering all the inspiring people we heard from. John needs to be in control of things. But today I have him sitting on the sidelines to listen and enjoy. He may pop in to answer questions or help clarify things. But for now, he's going to just enjoy.
Well, hang on a second. As Sheila knows, I do not have control issues. And she knows that because I just told her not to say that. And I forbade her from sidelining me. So that's not right. But seriously, the little idea I had when she came up with this idea, initially it was going to be me and Elise and Sheila. And my idea was, hey, why don't we ask a couple listeners who've been with us from the start to join in? That would just give us a great little perspective. And so I asked Cheryl Rickards and Pia Williams to be part of today's show. And Cheryl worked hand in glove with Sheila when she was a dance teacher and studio owner in Guelph. We've been friends for 30 years, and she's been a huge source of support for our show. Pia is the library manager and executive director of the Waterloo Region Law Association, and I work with her regularly. She's also done so much to support me and the show. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I understand you're going to run through each of the show segments, talk about things. And although this feels very odd to me, Elise, it's all yours. There are no rules.
Elise, you're here too. Elise, welcome.
Hi. It's so exciting to be here to celebrate 100 episodes. What a milestone.
I can't believe it.
It's crazy.
No. And it's so exciting to start with what's on your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love this segment because it really gets your mind ready for the episode and it covers so many different topics. I feel like there are no rules with what's on your mind. Mm-hmm. You can kind of talk about anything that you find or anything that interests you. I know one episode that stuck out to me was actually a really early episode. This was episode 2. So we're going back and I re-listened to it, which was kind of a fun experience. It was really fun to hear how much has changed since episode 2.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like we're a little smoother, like, kind of got it flowing better.
Yeah, I agree. I found the energy was much higher now and it's just a little different, which was a really fun experience. Mm-hmm. So this particular episode was talking about the masks that we wear and the ones that we don't always notice. Mm-hmm. So in this episode, John, you were speaking with Sammy Demarin and she was talking about her experiences in India and learning about how we often will cover up maybe our trauma or our insecurities with a certain mask where you might be the funny one or the kind one. And just trying to make sure you take that mask off and understand why you're covering that particular feeling up and what's really important to you as a person. Mm-hmm. So it made me really wonder, what masks do I wear? And at what times is it important for me to wear a mask and why? So I think I carry that with me a lot. And this was a while ago that we heard this episode. So it's amazing that this stuck with me so much after all this time.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, I know I'm not allowed to be a huge part of this, but a quick point is that that episode blew my mind because happiness was a mask for me. Mm-hmm. That I often use happiness as a mask to hide other stuff and then I don't look behind it. So that was a big one for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's really applicable for a lot of people, right? I imagine a lot of people could listen to that episode again and be like, yeah, I wear a lot of masks at different times in my life.
Yeah, because you have to, right? Things are happening and then all of a sudden you have to go and, for me, got to go perform or, go in front of public or
put on your game face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Just go.
Yeah.
Then you think it's important to wear a mask. Like there are some times where you do need that mask.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to pass it on then.
Yeah.
All right.
Cheryl.
All right. That was a great episode, Elise. My favorite was more recent, episode 84, where you and Sheila were talking about friendships.
Ah.
And the effort that you really need to put into your friendships and how you have friendships from public school, high school, college, or university. Then you have work, you have extracurricular friends, your dance friends or theater or whatever it may be. And just how much effort you have to put in. It's not something that you can just take for granted. The part that surprised me was the studies that somebody had brought up was how it helps you sleep better. It improves your health, having good companionship, which I thought was really smart. The other thing that I think Sheila brought up was sometimes you dread having to go do things with friends, and then you're there and you're like, oh my God, this is so great. Just making that connection with people. And I am someone that I'm always like, it's easier to say no first, and you may remember this, and then maybe join later.
Yeah.
Because I get anxious, or I don't want to do things, or I don't want to fill up my calendar. And then once I've made the time to make that connection, I feel so much better for it. You learn things, you feel better, and it's never a wrong thing to do. So it really stuck with me, and I thought back on it, and as the conversation was going, everything resonated with me. So I really liked that one.
Yeah, that's amazing that it was so powerful. And Cheryl, I have to say, dance friends are the best friends.
And what about you, Pia?
So I didn't have just one episode from that because I enjoy every single time that Elise and you are talking about your travels in India.
They were so much fun.
I love when my daughter and I can kind of share those kind of memories together.
Yeah.
And I love hearing the two of you talk about your time traveling. I love Elise's stories after you, I guess, went home. Elise stayed, and her stories in India. I'm a huge travel buff. I love traveling. So I love listening to other people's stories about traveling. The one that really stood out for me was the one with the Himalayas, Elise. I liked that one an awful lot. But I do like all the humor that you find and that you put into your travel stories.
It's amazing everything you can get out of traveling. It's one of the best experiences you can invest in yourself, I think.
I agree, because some people think travel is a waste of money. You know, pay down the mortgage, pay down your car. But I think the experiences that you get from traveling are so expansive.
This is really exciting for me because I've so enjoyed all this travel series stuff, which we started trying to make a connection between travel and wellness, which I really think there is. Isabel is currently in a trip in Europe. She's going to come back and tell us a bunch of stories from her trip in Europe. And we're getting a new co-host, Nora, and she was just in Italy. We're hoping that travel becomes a regular component of what's on your mind.
That would be wonderful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like Sheila and Elise just said, you get so much out of traveling. You learn, I think, to empathize and sympathize with other cultures as well. The one thing I know my children have learned, and I've learned, is, just kind of let things happen. Don't get as worked up about stuff. Stuff happens. Things don't always go right. And you just kind of have to learn to go with the flow.
That's so true. Okay, so my favorite, and actually I think a few of you did mention this one, the giver syndrome, energy taker and the energy giver, as well as that was episode 14 and 25, active listening. So I kind of think of those as the same, but the active listening one really resonated with me because I'm not an active listener, actually. So that's why I've learned a lot from that, realizing, sometimes you have to listen and take it in. You don't have to keep commenting on everything. So I learned a lot from that one, and as well as the giver and the taker, and the fact that it's kind of a female quality. And I think you all kind of said that too, that one really resonated with you.
Active listening, it's funny how many people, and when you pay attention, you notice people who are listening to respond. Mm-hmm. They're not taking in, they're just waiting for the break in conversation so they can, they're not actively listening. They're just waiting their turn.
And I
it's the most frustrating thing. When you,
there you go. I just did it.
When you start paying attention to it, it's so interesting talking to people because I could say anything right now. You're just waiting for me to take a breath and you're just going to, spew something at me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been really trying to become a better active listener.
It's a hard skill. And I think another thing I try to do is solve people's problems. Sometimes people come to me and they want to just tell me problems. And I feel like, okay, you're telling me that means I have to solve it for you. But sometimes you just need to listen, and that's all they need.
That's very true. I've been guilty of that myself. And now one of the things I've learned from listening to that segment as well was to say to my children when they come to me, do you want advice or do you just want me to listen? Like, is this just an advice piece, or are you just bouncing ideas off or venting at the moment? So I've actually started conversations now with them, and it seems to have helped an awful lot in terms of, I think I know I've been guilty of listening just to hear myself speak afterwards.
But when you do that, do you wait till they talk to you and then do it, or do you talk early? Because I can imagine if you said that too early in a conversation, it might actually stop them from talking.
I actually wait until they've told me what their issue is, and then they take kind of a breath. And then I say, so at this point, are you wanting just to bounce ideas off of me and just to vent, or are you wanting for my advice and a little bit of my life experience? So sometimes they change their mind throughout the conversation. But I think for them, it's been nice because it's given them the permission to say to me, Mom, I just want to vent right now. So, because as a mom, my first inclination is to try to fix it.
Yeah, I think that's a real mom thing. And generally kids don't think we know anything, so they just want to vent to us, so they don't want to hear our opinions. So it's great just to listen.
I have one child who uses me. It took me a while to realize. She would call and just spew. I'm a mess. She's hung up, and then I realized I'm like her mental junk drawer. So she just needs to like get it all out, and then I need to just close that drawer.
Yes.
And we're done. Instead of, oh my gosh, because she's not giving it another thought. She's hung up and moved on, but she's got it out. So I just close that drawer.
Yes. That's a good metaphor.
Now let's move on to our Expanding Minds interviews.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds.
Sheila, what did you think of this segment?
There was so much to think about this segment because there's so many and there was all different people. I would like to talk about all the personal struggles and all the personal stories that we heard. Just a few, like Beth, Michael, Stefanie, Imran, Jodi, and Reverend Nora. I was really touched. Sometimes I was actually tearing up hearing about these stories. The fact that they were willing to talk to us about them and just put it out there, and to hear how they overcome or how they moved on, and the good things that happened and the bad things. And I was just really touched by those stories.
It was incredible. And it, I think, helped me to really think about what's really important in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Hearing all those struggles, you think, oh man, my life has been a lot easier, or this or that. Yeah.
And just understanding how to prioritize relationships or my connection to nature, or thinking, is my job really worth all of the stress that I put into it?
Right.
I loved all of those stories. It makes you appreciate what you have when you don't have that kind of struggle.
Yeah.
I was impressed with with how brave so many of them were to share their stories with us. Some of the stories must have been incredibly difficult to talk about, and how incredibly brave they were to publicly speak about them.
I think John had a lot to do with helping everybody that he interviewed feel comfortable. And I found it very respectful the way you interview John, in that you take the time to actively listen. And while I'm sure you had a lot prepared, you brought a lot out of the person you were interviewing and allowed them to speak with ease. So I really appreciated that part of all of those stories, particularly Shayne Corson. I thought that was an exceptional interview.
Oh, so good. I realized that you can't judge people. You just never know what people are going through. These were, very powerful business or whatever they were doing. They were important people, and yet they're going through these struggles. And so you realize you can't judge people.
I really appreciate that, Cheryl, too, because a big reason why I keep asking for as many of these types of guests as possible is because we're trying to break down stigma. And this is how you do it. Having people who are brave enough to talk about things. And then that means other people hopefully won't be afraid to talk about things with their friends or their family or whoever. And the one other thing I just want to say that I take from these interviews is I get a sense of hope, because we've seen people go through so much, and yet there's always hope, right? That things can get better. And what's really amazing to me is so many of them, when things do get better, what do? They start trying to help the people going through the same situation in the future. So it's a wonderful feeling when I have those conversations.
Yeah, that's very true. And one more thing I wanted to bring up, he actually did too, was Clarence Cachagee. And that blew my mind. Listening to him, and he was so honest and forthright. It was just amazing. He was an Indigenous guest. And John, what were his 2 interviews about?
One of them was territorial acknowledgements compared to land acknowledgements, which to this day I still see people mix up.
Yeah.
And secondly, he did one on the 4 quadrants of his concept of spirituality.
Right. It was inspiring. Like just having your feet touch the ground and appreciate it, your bare feet. And I was inspired and literally like just wanted to hold someone's hand, walk with me. Those were mine. What about you, Cheryl?
Well, I loved that interview also. And I have a cottage on Indigenous land. And I went to a powwow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a couple summers ago. And it was fantastic. Right on the reserve, they invite everybody. And it is the most incredible thing. The way they appreciate land and their family and revere their elders. It's beautiful. But my favorite interview was with Shirish.
Oh, Shirish Nathwani.
The Hindu spirituality.
Oh.
And it was probably a difficult interview, John. He was a little bit hard to understand. I listened to the interview 3 times because I was very interested in it. And when you were just saying about the Indigenous spirituality, Shirish did the same thing. He gets up in the morning, he puts his feet on the floor. He observes that. He looks, he appreciates the light, earth, wind, air, fire, all of the elements. And I find that it doesn't matter really what our spirituality is. There's so many similarities. I just love to learn about other cultures. And I thought he did a very good job of explaining the Hindu spirituality and practice and the rituals and routines that they do. I really enjoyed that interview.
I really enjoyed it too. He made me happy. Like he seemed incredibly joyful, like joyful of life. So that's what I got out of that one.
It was a great interview.
Yeah. What about you, Pia? Which one was yours?
So Clarence was one of mine as well. I mean, blew my mind. Just the way he explained the difference between territorial and land acknowledgements. I'd never heard it like that before, and it gave me a lot of pause. But the other thing he talked about that I loved was the sage, the smudging that he talked about, and how, you smudge around your ears so you can hear with kindness, and your throat so you can speak with kindness, and around your middle so you can feel with kindness. And I just thought, I loved that. Like that was just, I never truly understood the meaning behind the smudging before. So it just completely opened up my mind. And the other one I really enjoyed was Stefanie Sutherland discussion about ADHD. I work with her, but just listening to how she described how she works with ADHD, how it's part of her everyday life, how she discovered she had it too. She was reading a book. And it kind of flagged for her that she had such a supportive doctor that was able to help her right away with a diagnosis. And so now she understands why she works in a certain way and why she also has to adapt to work in a certain way too. I thought, wow. And I also know from working with the licensees how incredibly brave that would have been for her as well, to come forward and talk about that, especially in the profession that she works in.
Yeah, that's a thing.
So I really enjoyed that.
What about you, Elise?
I wrote down a lot of the ones that we actually spoke about. So I'm so glad that others also reflected a lot in those conversations. One that kind of blew my mind and has resonated with me in an almost worrying way was the interview with Tova Davidson surrounding UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I remember very vividly, I was sitting outside enjoying my backyard. It must have been the start of nice weather or something, because I was sitting outside enjoying the podcast. And she's actually talking about how Canada, we have the highest emission per capita within all of the G20 countries.
Oh my gosh.
It scared me a little. So
I was so upset. It really upset me because I thought, you know, as Canadians, we're so environmentally friendly and we have the most water and we have the fresh air and everything. And then when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, we're not as good as we think we are.
Yes, it really, really blew my mind. So her discussing kind of the goals that they have and what we need to work on, and just understanding how much of a community-driven idea it is to help preserve our planet.
Yes, that one really resonated with me too. I love how you have to ask to say something every time. Can I say something? Excuse me.
You done?
Yeah.
This is what I have to put up with people, like, all the time. Anyway, on this journey I'm on, finding all these different categories of wellness and thinking more about them, I think environmental is one that's so important. I never really focused on as much in terms of how much it affects my everyday life and how some of these things we really do need to work on. So I'm hoping to get more people talking about environmental. And I was very shocked when Tova said some of those things as well. And I've changed my behavior since. So hopefully other people might too.
We didn't get to all of the ones that we want to talk about, but I will just mention them quickly. The first one was episode 36, Imran Kamal, Addressing Addiction. Episode 90 was Reverend Nora, Fatal Diagnosis and Beauty All Around. Episode 72, Ross Earnshaw, Homelessness Has Many Faces. And episode 12, Sandy MacFarlane, stand-up comedian, mental health.
Those were all great interviews. My favorite part of the Expanding Mind interviews is at the end when John asks the questions to his guests about what facet of wellness they may be lacking with right now. I find it's so interesting to hear from different people who are going through different struggles and where they find they're lacking.
Actually, so it's a question I ask every guest. What's amazing is it's usually people who aren't having any struggles on the face of it. You just hear from some amazing guest who you're just like, wow, this person is so together. I wish I could be so together like this person. And then you ask them if there's something that they're lacking and if they can think of an activity, and they always can, at least one, you know, and then like you can tell they're picking from one of many. So all of us are the same. We all need to do some work. What I wanted to mention about that one was Clarence Cachagee. I asked that question of Clarence, and, you know, the whole interview had been about one topic, and that just took it in a completely different direction. And frankly, that his answer to that question and what we learned about him, it just blew my mind. It blew my mind. Just fantastic. So it's something I tried and wasn't sure how it would go. And it's something I'm so glad that we do.
Yeah. I remember working on that question. It was quite long to start, and he kept asking me, what do you think of this? And I'm like, what do you think of this? And then we got it down to...
No, it's so true. Like, I'm so glad I bounced a lot of ideas off Sheila, because initially the focus of that question was going to be all about physical. So my theory is that physical wellness is a key ingredient to all areas. So I was going to initially focus on, you know, when you're feeling off, what can you do physically to get back on track? And Sheila kind of, no, that didn't work. And so it went through different variations and eventually came up with something that seems to work really well. So,
yeah.
So I'm glad you noticed that, Cheryl, and I'm glad people enjoy it.
I like to try to answer it myself sometimes when I'm listening, and it's always different for myself too.
Yeah, I do that too. Sometimes I'm kind of like, oh, I really need, or when they give you an answer, you're like, oh, I need to do that. I need to. I actually bought a journal book and everything when they were like, I need to journal. I'm like, I'm going to do that. And John's like, she hasn't even opened it. I did open it, but I haven't written much in it. So, you know, things like that where you're just like, oh, I need to read more, or, you know, whatever they're saying.
Well, I have a meditation pillow.
You do?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Lori was inspiring, but I don't sit on it very much.
It's a start.
I should.
And now let's get to Starving Artists. Of course, that is Cameron Earnshaw, our starving artist, and it's been really fun to listen to his stories. What do you have to say about that, Pia?
It's been great to listen to Cameron. I've learned so much about music from listening to him. Mm-hmm. One of the ones that I really enjoy, well, there's two, but they kind of go into each other. Like I even think when he says them, he'll say like in a second one, oh, remember when I talked about, but it was episode 13, the 3-chord functions, and episode 26, breaking theory rules. Those were great sections. But the one thing that Cameron really does is he's able to talk about music in a way that I can understand it. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoy it. Music has never been, like if I were to do my wellness, my 8 areas of wellness, art and music would not have been on one of them before listening to Cameron. But he put it on there. I have always had such a challenging time with music when I was young, just hearing it and understanding it. And I had a music teacher too that also believed, well, you'll just start them like in the hard place. So put me on the clarinet. And that was like the worst thing I think you can do to somebody who really doesn't understand music. And so listening to Cameron talk about, particularly in his theory, where he's talking about how music can make a sentence. And he's using, I think it's C, to demonstrate this. And he's kind of saying, you know, this one sounds like, oh, I like your shirt. And then he says, this one sounds like, oh, I like your shirt. Like it's like there's something else coming at the end of that, like a but. Or I think there's a last one that's called Discord, where he talks about how it wasn't used in certain spiritual music.
Yeah, how it was like not allowed.
It's in the beginning of The Simpsons. And as soon as he said it, I was like, oh, it is too. So just being able to explain it in a way that I can understand it and appreciate. And now I've found a whole new appreciation for music when I'm listening to it because of him.
Yeah, like I actually know what a perfect fifth is now because he said it's the start of Star Wars. I'm like, oh, there you go. Like everybody knows that, right? Yeah, that is really cool how he does that.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great one. One of the things that Cameron did in episode, I think it was 31, he talked about a nose trick, where you raise the soft palate to raise your voice, which I thought was really interesting. Also, as a music lover, but not a musician, I was blown away in episode 66 when he asked to play with a Bruce Springsteen cover band, and they were doing the song Rosalita, which is classic. And he had never heard it. And I'm like, okay, Cameron must be very young because this is classic. He learned it, he performed it, he loved it. But my favorite episode, I think I'm going to say, is episode 96, which is very recent. He talked about Chateau Laurier and how when he's living somewhere and he's performing, he kind of has a dream place to perform. I think Langdon Hall was one of them. And then he wanted to play at Chateau Laurier, and he thought about this. And really, I'm thinking to myself, he's manifesting what he's going to do. And it kind of ties in with all of the meditation and the spirituality from other segments. And I thought, here we have a completely different segment, and he's talking about his music, but really what he's doing is manifesting where and what he wants to play and making it happen.
Making it happen is what amazed me, that he actually did it. Yeah. Amazing.
He's phenomenal. And you could tell how passionate he is about music and the way that he speaks about it. And he's just so incredibly knowledgeable, which I love. And I wish that he could have been my theory teacher as well, Pia. I think it would have helped me big time.
What's your favorite, Elise?
My favorite is episode 15, entitled Da-na-na-na.
Loved it. I love it. Da-na-na-na.
And in that segment, he talks just about this funny sound that he would say with his friends and how they created a whole song out of it. And it's just such a fun reminder of how much joy you have when you share music or art.
Because they were actually video gaming. Like his friends, they were playing a video game, and then whenever something happened, or they'd go, da-na-na-na. And so this was kind of what was happening while they were playing, and they'd kill someone or something, da-na-na-na. And then Cameron or his friend just put it together in this whole song, and it was so funny. Yeah, I love that one. But my favorite, which I'm sure you guys will all remember, Pizza Box. I love Pizza Box.
Yeah.
I thought that one was so funny and so true. Like, you know, you're inspired. So just to give you the backstory with that, Pizza Box episode 5, and they're all going to, I don't know, Chalet or somewhere to do writing. They're all going to work on writing and doing the music. And they get their most important stuff, their liquor and all that stuff together. And they go, and then they've got the pizza, and they're sitting there and they're getting inspired. And then they have no paper. They have no paper anywhere to write anything down. So how are you going to get any work done?
Yeah, they came up with the perfect lyrics for a song and nothing to write it on.
Yeah. So they're looking around. They found a pizza box. And so they wrote the whole thing on the pizza box. And supposedly this is a quite popular song that they still sing today, which is called something else. But they referred to it as Pizza Box because they wrote the song on the pizza box.
And they brought it home in the car with them because that was their lyrics.
Yeah, they brought it home. I don't know if he still has it, but yeah,
They should frame it.
Yeah, I really like the funny stories, like, because he has, like you guys said, the educational stories. I like the funny stories. The other one was the proud teacher because I could totally relate to that. I didn't realize until I started teaching, I'm teaching dance, but teaching kids how proud you can be of what they've overcome or how they performed, and even how nervous you can get when they're going to perform. So Elise, you probably have that with your little ones still.
All the time.
Yeah, so that was really nice to hear. And Proud Teacher was episode 19. So there are some Starving It artists. If you'd like to listen, go back and listen to some of them. Thank you, Cameron. And now, Cheryl.
Let's move that body like we're meant to do.
Oh, yeah.
This is my favorite segment because I say the title along with Sheila every single week because it cracks me up. It's awesome.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
So there's so many good segments of Move That Body. Julie and Elise have had some great ones. Mm-hmm. There's been some funny ones. Lori's morning walk was great. I've been inspired to go for morning walks to maybe see a naked man. I'm not sure. I think that was episode 32. Another one I really liked was exercise snacking with Elise and Julie. My job is I start really early in the morning and I have a chunk of time in the middle of the day and I finish late. And often during that chunk of time, I don't want to work out, but I don't think. So I'm like, well, I can't work out. So when I was listening to exercise snacking, I had never heard that before. I know that if you do a little bit here and there, it will add up. But the way it was broken down in that episode, I was like, oh, you can actually get up and just do 10 minutes of movement or 10 minutes of this or that, and it will all add up. I thought that was a really interesting way to move that body.
Mm-hmm.
And who doesn't love a snack?
Yeah. I was actually really excited when I first heard the title, but yeah.
Exercise snacking. Get out your Cheetos. No.
Yeah, exactly. Chips and spin class. That's what I thought.
Yep.
But that's not what it was. It was a great one to do and a really interesting article that we found. So that was a lot of fun to discover.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the episodes that stood out to me was episode 93, which is Think Like a Kid. Mm-hmm. I loved hearing John and Sheila talk about how to just follow your intuition with exercise and just really have fun working out. I think overall, Move That Body has a lot of amazing segments about different forms of exercise and really fun ideas. But the ones that really stand out to me are ones that just help you remember that moving your body does not have to be complicated and that you can make it fun.
Definitely. You're more successful if you look at it like play and not like work because you enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Great episode.
Yeah, I really like the one, Elise, that you did about not making exercise about losing weight. It's not all about the calories and the losing the weight and all that, and I think in a lot of our episodes, we do kind of put that in there, that it's about how it makes you feel, get moving.
I agree. And on that same kind of note, I like the one, I think it was you, Sheila, that did that, getting motivated to work out. But in that, you also talked about that it's okay not to do what you're normally doing. I think you talked about that too. And you talked about your leg injury. you couldn't get to the gym and do what you normally did, but you could do other things. And so you were still moving that body, and to kind of forgive yourself on days where you just don't feel like going out for that run or that walk. But if you're doing something else, like house cleaning or something else, you're still moving that body, and to just practice a little self-kindness and self-forgiveness.
Yeah, that's a hard one, but yes, for sure.
You guys are doing a great job saying where all the episode numbers are. And just for people listening, if you don't hear the episode number, it's pretty easy. Just go on to letsbewelltogether.com to the archives page and just type in the keyword and do a search, because we have all the segments identified on the archives page. A couple of them might not be the same name that we talk about. Like, I don't think Pizza Box is Pizza Box. I think that's like artist writing session. But for the most part, if you do a keyword search on one you like, you will find it on the archives page. There's a thought. Popped up while running.
I love how popped up while running just follows move that body, because John's out there moving that body and also moving his mind to let us know what he's thinking about while he's running.
Yeah, John's running pop-ups, sometimes they are inspiring. I think the ones that hit me the most are the funniest ones. Sometimes they're not even funny to anyone else but me, but this one was the 3 categories. That's what it's called. John, tell us what it was about.
Popped up while running. So thinking about people, do you ever hear people and they say how smart they are, or they try and convince you how smart they are? And it's making me think there's a whole bunch of categories of people in terms of intelligence, but there's a few groups that I can think of, and essentially anybody who says they're really smart, they're not very smart. So as soon as they say that, that's a bad sign. And then there's another group kind of in the middle, and they wonder if they're smart, but they don't think they are, because they can think of so many things that they don't know. And that's kind of the expression, the more you know, the more you don't know. And so those people are probably okay, but they don't present themselves like they know everything. And then there's a third group who are really smart, and they're so smart, and they're trying to figure a whole bunch of stuff out, and they're too smart to have time to worry about whether they're smart or not. So it doesn't even cross their mind. And so, shoot, it crossed my mind while I was running. So, gosh, I hope I'm in the second group. Otherwise, I'm in the first.
You don't want to think that you're the first. I'm so smart. I just thought that was so funny. And what about you, Cheryl?
I had a few favorites. A real short one was, what if this was your last minute? And John was running and really took a moment to take in what was around him, how he felt, how the wind felt on his face, how the air felt, and what he saw. It was a good reminder that we need to be more present in our lives and what we do and how we feel and how things make us feel. My favorite was episode 45, and it was called Bye, Dad. And it was John's reflection of losing his father and things you go through. And these are things that all of us have or will go through. And I think it was really brave to share things that he wasn't sure maybe he had done enough of, or maybe he had, and just reflecting in an open public forum, I think was really special. And as a listener, I felt honored that he shared such personal moments with everyone.
Pia?
I particularly enjoy when John's running pop-up talks about running.
P is a runner.
Myself, I found his segment on the running Kitchener, where he ran the entire map of Kitchener, which now I'm thinking, because I was running while he was talking about running Kitchener, and then I had my own running pop-up, and I was thinking, well, they probably added more streets now. And have to
Don't tell people that.
Wow. I think that was episode 12, I think. And I thought, wow, what an amazing accomplishment to say that you run all of Kitchener. I thought, that's just amazing. And then when he was talking about the London Marathon, and not only how he trained for that, but even when he was getting so exhausted, and then, he was talking about how he saw Sheila, and it just helped just that last little bit through the way. I thought that was great. And then a recent one that he was talking about was the favorite running weather. And I have a lot of those shared running weather. I hate when it's too hot to run. But I do like that like that temperature that's just around, between, I would say, -4 to +4. I find that, and how you feel like you don't feel like you're running as well as you should when you're in the heat, and your time's down and your speed's down, and then suddenly it cools down and you're kind of like this burst of energy to run again. When I was running and listening to that, I thought, yeah, that's it. And as I was running it, I think it was a day where it was it was one of the colder days last week where I had to kind of bundle up and go out because I think the wind chill hit -11 or something. And I was like, yeah, but I do really like this. So yeah, like most of the ones I enjoy are when he's talking about his own.
Don't
running.
encourage him, Pia.
The London Marathon was a great one. Now, you didn't speak about the Montreal Marathon in the podcast, have you, John?
No,
or will listeners have to buy the book to read that?
I don't like to think about it.
Yeah.
You know what? You're a great storyteller when you speak in these short segments of pop-ups, but the book, I was really invested in that Montreal Marathon.
Yeah, me too.
It was a great story. The way you tell it, you didn't miss any emotions, and you really drew the reader in. I really felt for Sheila. And, well, obviously I felt for you, but people will have to buy the book.
Yeah, just for
to get that story, but it's great.
Yeah, just
Unless
for
you do it on a
reference.
later segment.
Cheryl's husband is an avid runner, and I think some of your children are running. So you've been through all of that. So, oh boy,
that was absolutely my favorite part of the book too. So everyone needs to go buy it. Accidentally Well by John Webster. Check out the Montreal Marathon.
Yes.
I agree with Pia though that the Run Kitchener project was my favorite running pop-up because that whole project started as kind of a running pop-up with your shirt, John. You wanted to make a shirt, I'm not the mayor, but I run this city. And that's kind of how that project started. And I thought that was really cool.
You're right. It was a running pop-up idea.
Yeah. A pop-up for a pop-up. Another episode that I absolutely love is episode 22, where you talk about your re-birthday. So that's when you celebrate your streak of doing a 10K run for 6 years. And It just reminds me of a moment when I was at home, when I was living with you both, John and Sheila. I was in the basement and I hear someone knock on the sliding door, and I open it up because it was locked. His dad. And he's like, I just ran a half marathon.
I just ran a half marathon.
That is so cool, because that was the day I did my first one ever. Like in training, I was only supposed to run, I planned to run 13 kilometers. And for some reason I was out there and I'm like, I got to see if I can do this. And it was really, really, really hard. And so probably I had to knock on the back door because we live in a house where to get to the front, I had to climb up a bit.
I think that's exactly, or maybe you had just jumped in the pool or something. It was summer. But you were so excited. And just that episode about your re-birthday reminded me of that moment, and it brought me a lot of joy.
And last but not least, let's talk about flip side of the coin.
Just let me say, these are my favorite ones.
Really? You mean like this is your favorite segment?
Why?
I think I was
on you too at the beginning.
Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
And the intro that we did, that was just, John didn't even know what I was going to do. Like, because he was like, well, what should we do? And I'm like, oh, just press record and let's just do something. And that just happened.
Yeah, something just happened. And like, we didn't even plan it out. This is the intro part.
Yeah.
That goes with the music. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
We didn't really plan it out, and it just was perfect because it was like two people fumbling.
Yeah.
And
What? Wait, no.
It's perfect.
It's perfect. I think there are two quintessential episodes that you need to listen to for Flip Side of the Coin. And the first one is episode 19, which is called Why It's Called Flip Side. And in that episode, John and Sheila explain that flip side comes from John's book. And it's a theory about relationships where both partners maybe do things that annoy each other, but you don't really want to fixate on them because you realize that they do those annoying things and that's what makes them so lovable to you because that makes them who they are. And I thought that was a really interesting way to think about the term flip side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the idea is whatever that, if you actually think about that little thing that you find annoying at times, it's probably arises from the same trait that makes that person do 10 things that you love about them. It's just the 1 out of the 10 that you don't like. So if you try and get rid of that whole thing, you lose it all. So you always have to think about the flip side of the coin before you try and change people.
Yes. And some great relationship advice in there about just knowing when not to say things. Super important.
Like most of my life.
No, that's not him. It's me too. Like, I'm like,
just don't talk.
Stop talking. Yeah.
Another one I absolutely love is episode 1, where you both talk about how you met.
Yeah.
And it's always incredible to hear people talk about how they met and all of the small things that drew them to each other. And then just remembering what you remember from that time or what you take away from that time. Mm-hmm. It's really fun. And you could tell how joyful it was for both of you to meet each other.
Well, it was a shock to me because Sheila said that she fell in love with me because I was playing video games. I was like, I didn't even know that.
I swear he was so good at video games. That's when I fell in love.
I thought it was because he was a bartender.
Yeah. That's good too. Yeah.
That would have been a clincher for me.
Oh, that's funny. What about you, Cheryl?
This is probably my favorite segment. It just cracks me up most of the time. I really enjoyed all of your conversations about art. Having seen a lot of your art, I love it. And I wish I had have done that when I was younger and picked up things through my travels, although my travel hasn't been extensive, but just to appreciate like the artists and to have that art as a reminder of things. Another one I loved is Let's Talk About Sex. Mostly because I never thought I'd hear John ever say something like that.
I know.
So that cracked me up. And then episode 93, just because you know what's good, knowing the good and doing the good are different. Like when John talks about he doesn't want the salad, but when he eats the salad, he loves the salad. It goes back to other things that you've done in your running pop-ups where you talk about things, okay, when I do this, I feel good. I have to reflect on that. Mm-hmm. And it just reminded me, and it's the same with me as I know I don't want to work out or I don't want to do yoga, but getting on the mat, I get off the mat and I'm like, wow. Just so, even though I know that eating the salad or going for the walk or doing whatever, just because you know it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to benefit from it. Yeah. You actually have to do it. And then when you do it, you love it.
Yeah.
I'm not a youngster and I still have to be reminded that, you know, you will feel better once you do this. So that one really resonated with me.
Great.
Loved it.
Pia, what about you?
One of the ones, I mean, a lot of them really resonated with me, but one of the ones was, I think it was episode 39, people glued to their phones.
Oh, yes.
And I was thinking, it's so true. Well, you guys were talking about how everybody's got their heads down looking at their phones. I mean, one of the rules we implemented in our family is at the dinner table and when we go out to restaurants, no phones on the table, no phones out anywhere to help create conversations. But I don't know how many times I'm looking around in a restaurant and all I see are full families of 4, 5, 6, and they're all looking down at their phone and nobody's talking. And I thought, yes, I'm so glad somebody said that out loud because it needed to be said. I mean, the phones are great, but yeah, I mean, you can miss out on some wonderful conversations with people or just seeing. There's something to be said for sitting on a bench and, well, it seems kind of creepy, but just watching the people around you and just putting that phone down for a little bit. And the other one, and I have to say this because I'm a librarian, but the other one was episode 83, library. The library is amazing because it is amazing. But I think you and John were talking about your discovery of Libby at the time. And I thought, like, it's just, there's so many people I talk to and they say, I just don't have time to read. And I'm like, well, what about Libby? What's Libby? You know, and being able to download books and listen to them when you're walking, driving, running, biking, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Cleaning. Just, you know, the amount of resources that the libraries have, you know, whether it's a public, academic, or like ours, John, a special library, available to people that people just aren't aware of. But they truly are amazing, and they're hubs for the community, and they're the ones that know the community best. So I was like, yes, that's a great, that was a great one. So
that comes up in conversation quite a bit, PF. Often enough, I'm talking to people and they're talking about, you know, Audible or listening or whatever they're doing. I mentioned that Libby. I'm like, did you know? And it was actually Elise who hooked me up online. She's like, I'm doing it. And she just took my phone and hooked it up. And And I use it all the time. Love it.
It's a game changer. And it's amazing what resources the library has that you might not even know about. So for example, Stephen and I had to renew our library cards, and they told us that our library cards get us into 2 different museums in Owen Sound for free. Phenomenal. The Thompson Museum and the Billy Bishop Museum. So I thought, what an incredible resource. And a lot of people probably don't realize that there are some incredible resources you can access through the library. So be sure to check it out.
Yeah, like Elise, didn't you learn how to play guitar from a rental from the library?
I did. Yeah. The Kitchener Public Library, they rent out, I guess they loan out instruments. So you can loan out guitars. I can't remember all of the other instruments that they had available, but they had a variety of instruments. I also believe the downtown Kitchener location has a recording studio that you could rent out as well.
Wow. Yeah. We could do the podcast
if you want
there.
to record a demo and you don't have the resources to access that, you could use their downtown facility. So really amazing resources that you just don't know about until you go and see it and get their newsletters.
Yeah, I know our library, we can get into conservation areas for free, like with your library card, which is great, as well as museums. So there's always something, I think particularly if you have young children, it really helps with something to do for them, but also keeping those costs down as well. Audible's great if you want to get the new stuff right away. But if you're okay with putting it on hold and just waiting a couple of weeks, you'll get the same stuff that's on Audible on Libby for free at no cost.
Yeah. And talking about budget, that was one of my favorite episodes when John and I talked about budgeting, how we had this little budget that never thought we'd get it and doing all that. That one was funny. I also like the 2 sisters. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was episode 25 and Lori and I and John, I think it was just the 3 of us, went to a comedy show. And Lori and I just had a really good day. We were really happy. And the comedian made fun of us.
The first one.
And I was like...
The first one made fun. And that meant everyone that came up also teased them.
Every single one. All of them. It was like, oh my God, the happy sisters. Yeah, you happy sisters. I was like, oh my God.
I don't want to hear from you happy sisters.
Thought that was really funny. I mean, the great thing about Flipside is that, something happens to us. And so then we just come down because we're together. We just come down and do it. So it's like we have this little memory icon, like this memory bank of things that, when we're 90 and don't remember anything, we can listen to all these again. Yeah. So Flipside's just a nice, light, fun relationships. And, we talk about lots of fun stuff.
Okay. Before we leave Flipside, I have to mention episode 75. No shoes in the house.
Yeah.
And John says, if you really want to get on Sheila's bad side, wear your shoes in the house. And I'm sitting in my office going, oh my God, I hate when people wear shoes in the house. Like, there is nothing that drives me more crazy than shoes in the house. I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. Or if and you even mentioned, Sheila, if you go to someone's house, they're like, you leave your shoes on. I'm like, I'm not an animal. It is so against, and I'm not like, if you've ever been to my home, I'm not like a super clean freak, but I just can't do it.
And you sent that article after that one, Cheryl. I did. You sent an article, and I was like, "See, I'm not the only. There's an actual article about wearing shoes in the house." And when you watch those house shows and you see them walking around, looking at people's houses, walking around with their shoes on, I'm like, "Oh my God!" So it's nice that more people feel that way. Don't wear shoes in the house.
I felt vindicated. You felt vindicated.
Yes, that was a good one.
Take your shoes off.
Good flip side. I'm just adding this in after the fact that I forgot to mention Stephen and Elise's flip sides. They were awesome. I really enjoyed the one about the fire, having the fire next door and waking up to the sound and then the smell and then waiting however long it was for the firemen to come. And they were so concerned that their house might get on fire. And it was so intense. I thought that one was really cool. But also hearing about their relationship, how they met, how they cook, just everything was very cool. It's nice to get to know our hosts that way.
Okay, well, that's been amazing hearing from you guys. So let me just come back. I just want to tell you a little bit about just a really high level thought of what we were trying to do when we started and how that slightly transitioned to kind of a new objective. And then I got a question for you guys, and that might be a nice way to wrap up. Initially, the idea was, as you know, I wrote my book Accidentally Well, and I have this approach to wellness that talks about different categories of wellness, and it's a very activity-based approach. Start doing things. figure out what activities you can do to foster wellness in these different areas and start doing them. And that's because for me, that's kind of a manageable way to try and work towards balance where I can figure things out by myself. Of course, if I need help from a professional, I'll do that. But this is a great approach. And so initially the idea was to share ideas on a whole bunch of different activities, which is what we talk about on all these different segments, and also talk to people who've gone through experiences to see how they got through them, break down stigma and all that. But then it didn't take very long before I started doing the podcast where I realized I was learning more and more and more from people who were helping me better understand the theory and my approach. And so now I like to think of it more as I'm exploring this. I'm talking to people. Even today, I'm learning things from people. And I'm kind of on my own quest to learn more about wellness. And you guys are free to ride along. So all the listeners can ride along and listen in and hopefully hear some interesting stuff too. But given the first goal, if I can spin back to that, I'm just wondering, has participating in or listening to the podcast helped you enhance your overall wellness? And if so, what changes have there been?
For me, I really am invested in every segment and every player in the podcast. Like, I totally miss Sammy. I think I might have even messaged, like, where is Sammy? Is Sammy coming back? Or when she came back. And Lori is such a great guest because I think she's a teacher. Is she a teacher?
Yes.
And you can tell when she talks, like, she explains things. She's excited. She's a great guest. So I love listening to all of the different regular guests, just following along. In terms of all of my facets of wellness, it has made me think of things like financial wellness, whereas before I wouldn't have thought of that being a facet of wellness. I do try to move that body, and sometimes I'll do things I'm like, move that body, goes through my head. So it's just made me aware, and I listen to it every Tuesday morning, 9:00. I do a couple hours at work, and then I sit down and I listen to it, and it's a constant reminder of all different facets of wellness, and then learning from different spiritualities and different guests. It's just made me more open-minded and more aware of my own wellness.
I would agree with that. I think that it's as well, it's made me more aware. John's 8 areas of wellness, the first time he introduced them, it made me think, what are my 8 areas of wellness? Do they match with John's? Are they a little different? And I can say that I do have different areas, but one of the ones that I've included that I never probably would have before, and a lot of that's thanks to Cameron, is artistic area of wellness. I probably would have never included that in there, but because he does such a great job at explaining things, I've now thought, yeah, it does. It makes the art, now I look at art in a different way. I listen to music in a different way. And I can tell it affects my moods sometimes. So I find that very interesting. And it's been nice to, sometimes I know in the past, I've pushed myself a little bit too hard with my physical wellness in terms of running. And, just listening to John and Sheila sometimes to say, but it's okay if you're not going to do the full workout today, that you got out and did something, just learning that. But on the other side, I have been at some really big hills and heard Sheila go, move that body. And I thought, yep, okay, I can do it. I can go up this hill. So it's been very inspiring in a lot of ways. But listening to a lot of the interviews, particularly talking about listening, about mental health, some about parenting, the stories that John and Sheila have talked about their kids, in a lot of ways have made me a better mom and my ability to relate with my children. So thank you for that.
That's great to hear.
I think for me as well, looking at the 8 facets of wellness, it really opened my mind to what wellness could mean. It's not just exercise and diet. And I love that the podcast gives me an opportunity each week to do a check-in as different topics are discussed, maybe financial, maybe environmental, maybe physical. It allows me to think, am I incorporating that into my life in a positive and meaningful way? And how can I do that? So I really appreciate that the podcast gives me that opportunity each week.
And for me, it's been really great being part of the podcast. And John, you've done a really great job. Generally, John has done everything. He is an organizer. He gets the guests. He does all the editing and all the background and tells me what to say. No, not all the time, if I get to talk. But for me, it's actually been, I feel like I've actually slowed down a little and been more present. I'm the type of person, as I've said, and the flip side quite often is that I'm a doer. And often I just go, and almost don't think about what I'm doing. So I love the fact that this podcast has made me a little bit more present and aware and think about the other categories. Is this benefiting me or is it not? And am I giving up other categories of wellness in order to go? So I've been able to think about that and adjust my life accordingly. And I think I'm much better for it. Thank you, John. That's been very helpful.
I've given up control for a long time here. Can I take a little bit back?
Really?
Just to end the show, maybe?
Yes, sure.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much to you guys. It means a lot, and what you've said means a lot. I think I mentioned this recently, that when I started, I was thinking, I'm going to do 2 years worth of episodes and then decide if it's a project I want to keep going with. And I wasn't sure. Like at the time, I thought maybe by 2 years, I will have got my message out. Things are good, and I'm not sure if I would need to keep going. But what I want to say is I'm just so excited right now because in the last couple weeks, thanks to Libby, I listened to yet another book. I've listened to at least 10 books now since I've got it. And I just listened to one, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's not approachable for everyone because it's very technical from a philosophical perspective, but it's right in my wheelhouse. And some of the things he said just blew me away. And so there's going to be some running pop-ups coming out in combination with meeting Ryan Bush and reading his book that's not out yet called Become Who You Are, which is more readable and is just completely nails the theory that I found intuitively. I think that he's done a great job explaining it. All this to me, and I'm just so excited. I've got these things going on in my mind again. It's like I'm reignited, and I'm looking forward to exploring and being on this journey to find more about wellness. And I hope people keep riding along, and there's lots more of excitement to come. So thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And next week, we're back to our regular segments that you've heard so much about. So thanks, everybody. And thank you to our great guests.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.